Big news wasn't only that T. Higgins signed the franchise tag, or got tagged. He didn't sign anything. He got tagged. You're it. So he's going to stick around. You didn't like that one?
That was good.
Just so silly. Sometimes we get silly on this show. Also, another roster cut. Cappa. Cappa gone. It's going to be a long list of roster cuts, but simply want to ask the question to the host of Chatterbox Bengals and the other people in the room. I know they talked about this at points yesterday, is what is the answer to replace that interior line, one of the worst interior offensive line, the worst offensive interior line in the National Football League? That being said, we still scored more points than pretty much everybody in the league, so it still works. Maybe that quarterback's pretty stinking good. Maybe those wide receivers. You know what? Let's extend those guys. But what are the plans to solve that interior line? Is it going to be through free agency, or is it going to be in the draft?
I expect both, because I don't expect Cordell Volson to be a starting guard on this team either. And I think Cody Ford, if he's brought back, will be a depth piece. So I think there's going to be 2 starting guards added to the Bengals this offseason. I would guess one of them in the draft and one of them in free agency. We talked about it yesterday, but the Bengals meetings at the draft really lended themselves towards day 2 and day 3 interior offensive linemen. They avoided a lot of the no-doubt first-round guys, but they interviewed guys like Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson, both the interior linemen from Georgia. As I noted yesterday, the 2 most athletic linemen at the combine, which is a big change from the linemen that we've had under Joe Burrow. We've had one of the least athletic offensive lines in the entire NFL his entire tenure here. So getting one of those guys to be an athletic replacement for a guy like Alex Cappa, who was the poster child for an unathletic offensive line, that'd be a huge change and would allow you to do a lot more unique things, especially in the run game. Free agency-wise, I think someone that's really interesting to me is Pat McCary, because he's been in Baltimore for the last 4 seasons. He's played all 5 positions on the offensive line. His go-to position is guard, so he'd slide in there pretty easily. It seems like he's going to get around $7 million on the market, which I think is the range that the Bengals are going to want to attack. I don't think the Bengals are going to go spend $15, $20 million on an all-pro level guard or tackle. I think they're going to go get a bargain guy, like we saw with Alex Cappa, like we saw with Trey Hendrickson when he was on the market the first time. They fill these holes with bargain pieces, and that's why I think the other one going a little older, a little more win now. You answer the question with the guy that started the question. Kevin Zeitler's a free agent from Detroit, and he's obviously a little bit more expensive, but on a 1-year deal, right about $6.5, $7 million. That would be more guaranteed money than any other deal, because he is that 1-year older player. But I think that's a plug and play, no doubt, one of the best guards in all of football. So there's a lot of options out there for the Bengals. 2 guys that we talked about earlier this year, Zach Martin, already retired, the Cowboys guard who's going to free agency. Brandon Sheriff contemplating that as well. So some of those top names on the guard list in free agency have already knocked themselves off. Casey has a few other names in free agency that he's liked to try to fix the Jackson Carman mistake of years in the past.
I just based off of the list that we have, there's not a lot of left guards, but some of the left guards that are available, and I know that Kappa plays right guard, but you can solve some of the issues by filling one of the positions, either left or right in free agency, however you want to do it. Tevin Jenkins, I mean, he's a baller when he's on the field. He fits the size profile that they've been looking at recently with the new offensive lineman coach. He fits the arm length profile. The athleticism's there. And it's a guy that we should have took in the 2021 draft over Jackson Carman years ago. That was a huge mistake by the Bengals, not being able to draft Tevin Jenkins.
Well, I think that they don't forget the snow game in Buffalo.
It's true.
Don't forget the snow game in Buffalo.
There's a couple guys at the right guard spot, like we talked about. Brandon Sheriff, that's a veteran, the possibility there. James Daniels, who's played in the AFC North. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler.
A guy we met with last year that won a Super Bowl, Mekhi Becton, going to be your free agent.
That's right. There's a lot of different free agent options. And then if you look at the combine, just some of the guys that they met with, like Logan Brown. I know he's labeled as a tackle, but some of those guys can slide inside, and he was super athletic as well. There's lots of different options here, and options I feel like that are like the Tyler Booker situation too. Like, don't even rule that out.
Yeah.
I think he slides to the second round, and that's an option for them too.
Tyler Booker's there at 49. What a slam dunk pick that would be.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we have to remember as we go through the draft and free agency and everything along those lines, I see a lot of Bengals fans freak out when you see a tackle in the first round or the second round in mock drafts, or attacking a tackle in free agency. tackles move to guard a lot, and they do it at a very high level, especially college tackles, because most of the time, if not all the time, there's not 5 NFL talents on a college offensive line. So the guy that is an NFL talent is going to protect your quarterback's blind side. So the only offensive lineman that's moving on to the next level usually plays left tackle, especially at a lot of these smaller schools, and they'll be able to slide into guard and be immediate impact players a lot more often than those mid-level guards are. So if the Bengals take a tackle in the first or second round, don't say we're drafting another player to not play in the first year. I know we saw that with the plan for Amarius Mims, and then obviously Dax Hill the year before, Myles Murphy. This is a problem Bengals fans don't like to have. A tackle that we draft earlier this year would probably be one of the best situations for us because Orlando Brown is ticking down. There's only 2 or so years left on his contract. If we can draft an all-pro level guard for 2 years, bump him out to left tackle when Orlando Brown's done, address some of your needs, something Casey and I were talking about before the show today, offensive linemen of starting caliber under the age of 25 hit free agency at the lowest rate of any position. So if you want studs that are young and cash controlled, the only way to get great offensive linemen is in the draft. So the Bengals attacking that with a tackle wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
So Mekhi Becton. Was a tackle.
Absolutely.
And then he went to Philadelphia. He played guard on that team and obviously flourished. And you brought up a good point, which is the reason that tackles, they're so frequently called tackles when you draft them and they don't play there is for what you said. The best player on the offensive line typically plays tackle because that's where the hardest position is. So I guess my question is, Casey, you brought up size profile and we're talking about athleticism and stuff like that. Do you imagine is something that the Bengals are going to continue to look for are these big guys? Because that's what we've been going after for the biggest, the largest, Big X the plug. Are we looking for the biggest guys on the offensive line that might be a little slower, but knowing because we drop back so frequently, is this the profile that we're looking for?
Yeah. The short answer is they interviewed the guy that is, I think, the biggest ever.
Ever. I'll find his measurements in a second.
It's like 88-inch wingspan, which is just ridiculous. The arm length is just crazy, which is what they look for in tackles mostly. He's also like 6'8". I mean, he's a behemoth.
92nd percentile height, 95th percentile weight, 99th percentile arms, 99th percentile wingspan. Rutgers right tackle Holland Pierce. Bengals met with him at the combine.
Yeah, and like I said before, they interviewed Logan Brown, and he's also that similar size, like 34-inch arms type of guy. That's like the threshold that they've been looking at so far this year. And it seems like they are looking for length, looking for size here. So I would say that is the direction they're going. That's kind of how I also built out my spreadsheet here for free agents. Like the Tevin Jenkins thing makes sense because of that size profile. They're looking for big dudes, and it's because they pass a lot. They need to be able to hold their ground and not get bull rushed all the time. So,
going backwards, not forwards.
That's right. So, yeah, that I would say that I would agree with that assessment. They are looking for big dudes, and they're going to have a litany of options in the second and third day.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting what happens with the Bengals in this draft. Without diving in it too far, I know I've made this point on this show before. I think Jacob shares this sentiment. I think Casey shares this sentiment. Is we've seen the Lions do this now for a couple years, and with the kind of rotating, as we talk about, everything's cyclical, everything moves very fast in the NFL. Can you be ahead of the rest of the NFL teams? And one thing I've seen people do is instead of taking the third best tackle or the third best wide receiver or whoever, these elite pass rushers, fourth best pass rusher in the first round, let's start taking the best guy. Let's get the best guard in the draft. Let's get, even the best linebacker in the draft, because you know what? Let's just fill this team with as many good players as you possibly can. And instead of taking a defective or third or fourth at a premier position, let's just get the best guy at these less premier positions.